Chapter 1. Bradley opened the front door to his house, then made a face. It smelled like fish. "You're home early," his mother said from the kitchen. She was a large woman with fat arms. She was wearing a sleeveless green dress and holding a butcher knife. "My friends and me, we raced home," he told her. A fat fish, about the size of one of Mrs. Chalker's arms, lay on a board on the counter. Bradley watched her raise the knife above the fish, then quickly hack off its head. He walked down the hall to his room and closed the door. "Hey, everybody," he announced. "Bradley's home." But he was pretending that it was someone else who was speaking. "Hi, Bradley." "Hi, Bradley," he said. "Hi, everybody," he answered, this time speaking for himself. He was talking to his collection of little animals. He had about 20 of them. There was a brass lion that he had found one day in a garbage can on the way to school. There was an ivory donkey that his parents had brought back from their trip to Mexico. There were 2 owls that were once used as salt and pepper shakers, a glass unicorn with its horn broken, a family of cocker spaniels attached around an ashtray, a raccoon, a fox, an elephant, a kangaroo, and some that were so chipped and broken you couldn't tell what they were. And they were all friends. And they all liked Bradley. "Where's Ronnie?" Bradley asked. "And Bartholomew?" "I don't know," said the fox. "They're always going off together," said the kangaroo. Bradley leaned across the bed and reached under his pillow. He pulled out Ronnie the rabbit and Bartholomew the bear. He knew they were under his pillow because that was where he had put them before he went to school. "What were you 2 doing back there?" he demanded. Ronnie giggled. She was a little red rabbit with tiny blue eyes glued on her face. One ear was broken. "Nothing," told her 3 children. "Pass the salt," said the pepper owl. "Bradley," she said, "I was just taking a walk." I had to go to the bathroom," said Bartholomew. He was a brown and white ceramic bear that stood on his hind legs. His mouth was open, revealing beautifully made teeth and a red tongue. "They were making out," announced the Mexican donkey. "I saw them kissing." Ronnie giggled. "Oh, Ronnie," scolded Bradley. "What am I going to do with you?" She giggled again. Bradley reached into his pocket and took out a handful of cut-up bits of paper, his language test. "Look, everybody," he said. "I brought you some food." He dropped the bits of paper onto the bed, then scooped all his animals into it. "Not so fast," he said. "There's plenty for everybody." "Thank you, Bradley," said Ronnie. "It's delicious." "Yeah, it's real good," said Bartholomew. "Don't play with your food," the mother cocker spaniel. "Pass the pepper," said the salt owl. "Let's hear it for Bradley," called the lion. They all cheered, "Yay, Bradley." Ronnie finished eating, then hopped off by herself, singing, "Do-dee-do-dee-do." Then she said, "I think I'll go swimming in the pond." The pond was a purple stain on Bradley's bedspread where he had once spilled grape juice. Ronnie jumped into the water. Suddenly she cried, "Help! I have a cramp." "You shouldn't have gone swimming right after eating," Bradley reminded her. "Help! I'm drowning." Bartholomew looked up. "That sounds like Ronnie," he said. "It sounds like she's drowning in the pond." He hurried to the pond to rescue her. "Hold on, Ronnie," he shouted. "I'm under the—" The door to Bradley's room swung open and his sister, Claudia, barged in. She was 4 years older than Bradley. "Get out of here," he snapped at her, "or I'll punch your face in." "What are you doing?" she teased. "Talking to your little animal friends." She laughed, showing her braces. It was Claudia who had broken Ronnie's ear. She had stepped on it accidentally. She told Bradley it was his fault for leaving his animals strewn all over the floor. He didn't tell her that Ronnie wasn't on the floor, but lost in the desert. Instead, he had said, "Who cares? It's just a stupid red rabbit." "Mom wants you," said Claudia. "She told me to get you." "What does she want?" "Bought him the bear to make up for it." "What do I want a bear for?" he said when she gave it to him. Bradley went into the kitchen. The fish, now cut up and covered with onions, was frying on top of the stove. "You want me?" he asked. "How's everything at school?" asked his mother. "Great. In fact, today I was elected class president." "Your grades are all right?" "Yes. Mrs. Ebel handed back a language test today, and I got another A. In fact, it was an A+. May I see it?" "She wants to talk to you." "Tell your animals you'll be right back." "I wasn't talking to them," Bradley insisted. "What were you doing then?" "I was arranging them. I was putting them in alphabetical order. It's a project for school. Call my teacher if you don't believe me." Claudia snickered. Although she always made fun of Bradley's animals, she had really felt bad when she stepped on the rabbit. She knew it was Bradley's favorite. She had. Mrs. Ebel hung it on the wall, next to all my other A tests. "Mrs. Ebel just called," said his mother. His heart fluttered. "Why didn't you tell me that tomorrow was parents' conference day?" asked his mother. "Didn't I tell you?" he asked innocently. "No, I don't think so." "I told you," he said. "You said you couldn't go. You must have forgot." "Mrs. Ebel seems to think it is important for me to be there," said his mother. "That's just her job," said Bradley. "The more mothers she sees, the more money she makes." "Well, I made an appointment with her for 11 o'clock. Tomorrow morning." Bradley stared at her in disbelief. "No, you can't go," he shouted, stamping his foot. "It's not fair." "Bradley, what daft. It's not fair. It's not fair." He ran into his bedroom and slammed the door behind him. A moment later his mother knocked on the door. "What is it?" she asked. "What's not fair?" "It's not fair," he yelled. "You promised." "Yes," Bradley and Claudia lied. Bradley's father worked in the police department. He had been shot in the leg 4 years ago while chasing a robber. Now he needed a cane to walk, so he worked behind a desk. He didn't like that kind of work and often came home grumpy and short-tempered. The police never caught the man who had shot him. "I hate fish," Bradley said as he sat down. "So do I," said Claudia. "It sticks to my braces and I taste it for weeks." "Brussels sprouts make me throw up," said Bradley. "They smell like old garbage," said Claudia. "That's enough," said their father. "You'll both eat what's on your plates." "What did I promise?" "Bradley, what did I promise?" He didn't answer. He couldn't until he thought up why it wasn't fair and what she had promised him. He stayed in his room until Claudia told him that he had to come to dinner. He followed her out to the dining room, where his mother and father were already sitting down. "Did you wash your hands?" asked their father. Bradley held his nose with one hand while he picked up a Brussels sprout with the other, and put it, whole, into his mouth. "What's all this nonsense about your mother breaking her promise?" asked his father. Bradley was ready. "She promised she'd take me to the zoo tomorrow, and now she won't." "What?" exclaimed his mother. "I never said I'd take you to the zoo." "She did too," said Bradley. "Since there is no school tomorrow, she said she'd take me to the zoo. I didn't even know there was no school tomorrow until his teacher called me this afternoon," his mother protested. "You promised," said Bradley. 11 o'clock, Bradley insisted. His mother was flabbergasted. I don't even know when they feed the lions." 11 o'clock, said Bradley. "Don't lie to your mother," said his father. "Really," said Bradley. "They feed the lions at 11 o'clock. "Okay," said his father. "Janet, what time is your appointment tomorrow with Bradley's teacher?" 11 o'clock. "Okay, you can go to your appointment and still have time to take Bradley to the zoo, after lunch." "But I never said I'd take him to the zoo." "You did," accused Bradley. "And we have to go in the morning. We have to be at the zoo at 11 o'clock. Claudia snickered. "Why do you have to be at the zoo at 11 o'clock?" He glared at her, then turned back to his father. "Because that's when they feed the lions." Claudia laughed. "She promised she'd take me to see them feed the lions at." "I don't tolerate lying," said his father. "I'm not lying," said Bradley. "Call the zoo if you don't believe me. Don't lie to your mother and don't lie to me. Call the zoo. Your mother said she never promised to take you to the zoo. She's lying." Right after he said it, he knew it was a mistake. His father turned purple with rage. "Don't ever call your mother a liar. Now go to your room." "Just call the zoo," Bradley pleaded. "Maybe I did tell him I'd take him to the zoo," said his mother. "See," said Bradley. "Keep it up, Bradley," said his father. "Just keep it up. You want to be a criminal when you grow up? You want to spend your life in jail? I see people just like you every day at the police station. Just keep it up." Bradley stared angrily at his father. "Not all criminals go to jail," he asserted. "What about the man who shot you?" "I said, go to your room." Bradley stood up from the table. "I didn't want to eat this junk anyway." He stomped down the hall into his room and slammed the door. Then he opened it and shouted, "Call the zoo," one last time, then slammed it again. He lay on his bed and cried. "Don't cry, Bradley," said Ronnie. "Everything will be all right." "You'll think of something, Bradley," said Bartholomew. "You always do. You're the smartest kid in the world." Chapter 4. Bradley stood at the front door and hollered, "Mrs. Ebel is a liar. Don't believe anything she tells you." Bradley's mother got into the car, gritted her teeth, and drove to school. She was just as afraid as Bradley, if not more so, of what Mrs. Ebel would tell her. She wanted to believe Bradley when he told her he was getting all A's or was elected class president. She tried to fool herself that it could be true, even though she knew it couldn't. She knew her son, and she knew Mrs. Ebel wouldn't take the trouble to call her on the phone if everything were really as wonderful as Bradley said it was. Still, she hoped. She opened the door to Bradley's classroom. No one was there. "Hello," she called out timidly. She looked around. There was a bulletin board covered with the papers. She looked from one paper to another and hoped, with all her heart, that she'd see one with Bradley's name on it. She didn't. In the back corner of the room she saw a chart that listed the name of every student in the class. Next to each name was a row of gold stars. Next to Bradley Chalkers there were no stars. "Mrs. Chalkers?" Startled, she turned around to see Mrs. Ebel. "Oh, you scared me," she said, then smiled. Mrs. Ebel didn't smile. Mrs. Chalkers sat at a chair next to the teacher's desk and bravely listened as Mrs. Ebel told her about Bradley. There was nothing Mrs. Ebel said that she didn't already know. Still, it hurt to hear it. Deep down, he really is a good boy, she tried to tell. Bradley's teacher. "I'm sure he has a lot of good qualities," said Mrs. Ebel. "However, I have 28 other children in my class, and I can't spend all my time trying to help Bradley. He has to decide whether he wants to be a part of the class or not. And if he doesn't want to be a part of the class, then he shouldn't be here. He just makes it that much harder for everyone else." "What can I do?" asked Bradley's mother. "The school has just hired a counselor," said Mrs. Ebble. "I'd like your permission for Bradley to begin seeing her once a week." "Anything that will help my son," said Mrs. Chalkers. "I don't know if she can help him or not," said Mrs. Ebble. "Bradley has a very serious behavior problem. If he doesn't show improvement soon, more drastic measures will have to be taken. Deep down, he really is a good boy," said Bradley's mother. "Well, let's go meet the counselor," said Mrs. Ebble. She led Bradley's mother down the halls to the counselor's office. The door was open, but no one was there. Bradley's mother stepped into the room. Boxes were everywhere. Some were turned over, with their contents half spilled onto the floor. A yellow ladder lay on its side. In the center of the room was a round table surrounded by chairs, but the table and chairs were covered with papers and boxes and games and books. There was hardly room for Bradley's mother and teacher to stand. "She's just moving in," Mrs. Ebble explained. "I'm sure she'll have it cleaned up by tomorrow." Mrs. Chalkers shrugged. She picked up a dolphin puppet from an open box on the table and put her hand inside it. Suddenly there was a loud grunt, and a young woman entered the room. She dropped the box she was carrying, and more than 100 crayons spilled out across the floor. "Oh, hello," she said. She was a lot younger than either Mrs. Ebble or Mrs. Chalkers. She wore blue jeans and a red T-shirt with rock N roll written across it in light blue letters. She had light brown hair, almost blonde, and clear blue eyes. "I'm Carla Davis," she said, and held out her hand. Bradley's mother stared at her a moment, then reached out to shake her hand, but suddenly realized she was still wearing the dolphin puppet. She quickly removed it and put it back in the box on the table. The counselor smiled. "She needs to sign the form so that you can start seeing her." "Son," said Mrs. Ebble. Miss Davis looked hopelessly around her office. "They're around here somewhere," she muttered, then began tearing into the boxes. "Perhaps I'd better come back," said Bradley's mother. "Found them," said the counselor, holding up the forms. She cleared a space on the round table by pushing away a box and gave Mrs. Chalkers a form to sign. Bradley's mother looked around the messy office, then at the young woman with the rock N roll T-shirt. She shrugged her shoulders and signed her name. Miss Davis took the form from her. "Oh, you're Bradley Chalkers' mother." Mrs. Chalkers nodded. "You would not believe all the horror stories I've heard about Bradley Chalkers," said the new counselor. "I've been here less than 3 hours, but it seems like every teacher in the school has dropped by to warn me about him. Deep down, he really is dash," Bradley's mother started to say. "I can't wait to meet him," the counselor interrupted. "He sounds charming, just delightful." Chapter 5. At dinner Bradley's father asked how the meeting with Bradley's teacher went. Bradley looked down at his mashed potatoes. "Fine," said his mother. "Bradley is doing very well." "Good. Glad to hear it," said his father. Bradley was glad to hear it too. Later that evening his mother came into his room. "I met Miss Davis, the new counselor," she said. "You're going to begin seeing her tomorrow." "No," said Bradley. "I won't go." "Please, Bradley, don't be that way. She can help you, if you'll let her." "I don't need any help. You said I was doing very well. Did you want me to tell your father the truth? Do you want to be sent to military school? Maybe he's right. I don't know. Maybe that's what you need. You said I was doing very well. I heard you." "Please, Bradley," said his mother. "Give Miss Davis a chance. Please. You should have taken me to the zoo." It was drizzling the next morning as Bradley walked to school. He wore red rubber boots and a yellow raincoat. He stamped in every puddle along the way, making big splashes. He suddenly stopped when he saw Jeff standing next to the school, under the overhang. Bradley's right foot remained in the center of a puddle as he stared at his one and only friend. He took a deep breath, then slowly walked toward Jeff. "He has to like me," he tried to convince himself. "I gave him $1. "Hi, Bradley," Jeff greeted him. He didn't answer. "If you want, I can help you with your homework sometimes," Jeff offered. "I know I'm new here, but I'm pretty smart, and we learned the same stuff at my old school." He shrugged modestly. Bradley looked at Jeff as if he were from outer space. "I don't need any help," he said. "I'm the smartest kid in class. Ask anyone." They headed for Mrs. Ebble's room, side by side but not necessarily together. Chapter 6. Jeff Fishkin was hopelessly lost. He clutched his hall pass as he looked down the long, empty corridor. The school seemed so big to him. He was on his way to see the new counselor. She was supposed to help him adjust to his new environment. Now he not only didn't know how to get to her office, he had no idea how to get back to Mrs. Ebble's class either. The floor was slippery. It had started raining during recess, and the kids had tracked water and mud inside with them. A teacher carrying a stack of papers stepped out of a door, and Jeff hurried up to her. "Can you tell me where the counselor's office is, please?" he asked. His voice trembled. The teacher first checked to make sure he had a hall pass. Then she said, "The counselor's office. Let's see. Go down this hall to the end, turn right, and it's the third door on your left." "Thank you very much," said Jeff. He started to go. "No, wait," said the teacher. "That's not right. She's in the new office in the other wing. Turn around and go back the way you just came. Then turn left at the end of the hall, and it's the second door on your right." "Thank you," Jeff said again. He walked to the end of the hall, turned right, counted to the second door on his left, and pushed it open. A girl with red hair and a freckled face was washing her hands at the sink. When she saw Jeff, her mouth dropped open. "What are you doing in here?" she asked. "Huh," Jeff uttered. "Get out of here," she yelled. "This is the girls' bathroom." Jeff froze. He covered his face with his hands, then dashed out the door. "There's a boy in the girls' bathroom," the girl screamed after him. He raced down the hall. Suddenly his feet slipped out from under him. He waved his arms wildly as he tried to keep his balance, then flopped down on the floor. "Oh no, 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 oh no, no, no," he groaned. "What have I done? Oh, why didn't I just read the sign on the door? This is the worst day of my whole life." Suddenly, he realized he was no longer holding the hall pass. He stood up and frantically looked around. "Don't tell me I dropped it in the girls' bathroom." He heard someone coming and hurried off in the opposite direction. He rounded the corner, then spotted what looked like some kind of storage room. It was cluttered with boxes. He ducked inside and closed the door behind him. "Hello," said a voice. He spun around. A woman stepped down off a yellow ladder. "You must be Jeff," she said. "I'm Carla Davis." She smiled and held out her hand. "I'm so glad you've come. I was afraid you might get lost." Chapter 7. Jeff sat at the round table. The counselor sat across from him. "So how do you like Red Hill School?" she asked. He stared straight ahead. "There's a boy in the girls' bathroom," echoed inside his head. "I imagine it must seem a little scary," said the counselor. He didn't answer. "I think it's scary," she said. "It seems so big. Any time I try to go anywhere, I get lost." He smiled weakly. "It's hard for me because I'm new here," she explained. "Today is only my second day of school. I don't know anybody. Nobody knows me. The other teachers all look at me strangely. It's hard for me to make friends with them. They already have their own friends." "I know what you mean," Jeff said. "Maybe you can help me," said the counselor. "Me?" said Jeff. "How can I help you? I'm the one who needs help." "Well, maybe we can help each other. What do you think about that?" "How?" "We're the two new kids at school," she said. "We can share our experiences and learn from each other." Jeff smiled. "Okay, Miss Davis," he said. "Jeff," she said, "if we're going to be friends, I want you to call me Carla, not Miss Davis." He laughed. "Do you think Carla is a funny name?" "Oh, no. I just never called a teacher by her first name, that's all. But we're friends. Friends don't call each other Miss Davis and Mr. Fishkin, do they?" Jeff laughed again. "No," he said. Then he frowned. "The kids in my class call me Fish Face." "Have you made any friends?" asked Carla. "I sort of made one friend," said Jeff, "but I don't like him." "How can he be your friend if you don't like him?" "Nobody likes him. At first I felt sorry for him because nobody wanted to sit next to him." Mrs. Ebel said it out loud right in front of the whole class. "Nobody likes sitting there," she said. It was like he wasn't even there. It's bad enough when a kid says something like that, but a teacher— "It must have hurt his feelings," said Carla. "No. He just smiled." "He may have been smiling on the outside, but do you think he really was smiling on the inside?" "I don't know. I guess not. I guess that's why I tried to be friends with him. I told him I liked sitting next to him. But then he said, 'Give me $1 or I'll spit on you.' Is it something you can buy and sell? Can you go to the store and get a quart of milk, a dozen eggs, and a friend?" Jeff laughed. "No. So does that mean I don't have to be friends with him?" "I won't tell you what to do," said Carla. "All I can do is help you think for yourself." "I don't even know if Bradley wants to be my friend," said Jeff. "Today, at recess, we hung around together, but we didn't do anything. He acted like I wasn't there. Then, when it started to rain, he ran around trying to push little kids into the mud." "Could you share your feelings with him?" asked Carla. "That's the real way to build a friendship, by talking, and—" "What did you do?" "I gave him $1. I didn't want him to spit on me. But then later he said, 'Teal give you $1 to be my friend.' So I took it. It was my $1. So does that mean I have to be his friend, even though I just broke even? What do you think friendship is?" Carla asked him. "I don't know. I mean I know what it is, but I can't explain. By being honest and by sharing your feelings. Like the way we're talking and being honest with each other now. That's why we're friends." "But Bradley's different than you and me," said Jeff. "I think you'll find that if you're nice to Bradley, he'll be nice to you. If you are honest and friendly with him, he'll be honest and friendly with you. It's just like with the $1. You always break even." Jeff smiled. "Are you going to see Bradley too?" he asked. "Yes, later today." "Do you think you'll be able to help him?" "I don't know. I hope so. I think he needs help even more than me." "You won't tell him anything I said, will you?" "No, that's one of my most important rules. I never repeat anything anyone tells me here, around the round table. Never." She shook her head. "What about to other teachers?" She shook it again. "What about to the principal?" "Nope." "Okay," said Jeff. He took a breath. "Here goes." He grimaced. "On the way here, I got a little lost, and, accidentally went into the girls' bathroom." He covered his face with his hands. Chapter 8. Mrs. Ebel was teaching geography. Everybody in the class had a map of the United States on his or her desk. Bradley's map was different from all the others. California was above Wisconsin. Florida stuck out of Texas. He picked up his pair of scissors and carefully cut out Tennessee. He was a good cutter. The edge of his scissors never left the black line. He wondered what was happening to Jeff. He knew he was at the counselor's office. He imagined she was doing all kinds of horrible things to him. He had tried to tell Jeff at recess not to go see her. He taped Tennessee to Washington. He was a very messy taper. His piece of tape twisted and stuck to itself. He looked up as Jeff entered the room and watched him. Hang the hall pass on the hook behind Mrs. Ebble's desk. Then he looked away as Jeff headed for the seat next to him. When the bell rang for lunch, he shoved his map into his desk and pulled out his paper sack. Because of the rain, everyone had to eat inside, in the auditorium. He and Jeff walked there together, sort of. He's walking next to me, Bradley thought, but I'm not walking next to him. The auditorium was hot, steamy, and noisy. Long tables with benches had been set up across the room. "Where do you want to sit?" asked Jeff. Bradley ignored him. He stood on his tiptoes and looked around the room as if he was trying to locate his real friends. Jeff walked away and sat at one of the tables. Bradley walked behind where Jeff was sitting. I think I'll sit here," he said aloud, as if he didn't know Jeff was there. He stepped over the bench and sat down next to him. "Hi," said Jeff. Bradley faced him for the first time. "Oh, it's you," he said. They ate their lunches. "What are you eating?" asked Jeff. "Peanut butter sundae," said Bradley. As he spoke, bits of peanut butter and bread flew from his mouth. "Waboo you." "Tuna fish," said Jeff. Bradley swallowed his food and said, "I hate tuna fish." "My mother makes it good," said Jeff. "She chops apples in it." "I hate apples," said Bradley. He sucked the last drop of milk through his straw, then continued to suck, making a gurgling noise. Sitting 2 tables away from Jeff and Bradley were 3 girls, Melinda Birch, Laurie Weston, and Colleen Verigold. They were talking and laughing about something funny that had happened to Colleen that morning. Colleen, who had red hair and a freckled face, covered her mouth with her hand. "There he is," she whispered. "It's him." "Where?" asked Laurie. "Don't look at him," said Colleen. "He's right there, sitting next to Bradley Chalkers." "Bradley Chalkers," said Laurie. "I think I'm going to throw up." "Don't look," whispered Colleen. Bradley stopped sucking on his straw. "What did the counselor do to you?" he asked. Jeff shrugged. "Nothing." "Did she yell a lot? Was she mean and ugly?" "No. She was nice. I think you'll like her." "Me?" asked Bradley. "I'm not going to see her. I didn't do anything wrong." "She's good at helping you solve your problems," said Jeff. "I don't have any problems," said Bradley. He bit ferociously into a red, delicious apple. "I thought you said you hated apples," said Jeff. Bradley shoved the apple back inside the paper sack. "That wasn't an apple," he said. "It was a banana." Jeff's face suddenly changed color, first white, then bright red. "Ooh, I think he sees you," said Melinda. Laurie laughed. Colleen blushed. "He doesn't have a name," said Bradley, coming to Jeff's. "Come on," said Laurie. "Let's go talk to him." She stood up. Laurie Weston was a short, skinny girl with long, straight black hair. Melinda got up from the table too. She was nearly twice the size of Laurie. She had short brown hair. "No, don't go," pleaded Colleen. "What's the matter?" asked Bradley. Nothing," said Jeff. "So, Did I miss anything in class? No. Mrs. Ebel gave everybody a map. I got one. Don't lose it, said Bradley. Mrs. Ebel wants them back. Two girls were giggling behind them. Jeff and Bradley turned around. Colleen thinks you're cute, said Laurie. Jeff blushed. Who? He asked. The girls laughed. What's your name? Asked Melinda. Jeff blushed again. Colleen wants to know, said Laurie. Then she and Melinda laughed again. Rescue. He hated Laurie. She had the biggest mouth in the whole school. She was always laughing, too. He could hear her laugh from one end of the school to the other. Do you, Bradley Chalkers? Said Laurie, holding her nose. Laurie Loudmouth, said Bradley. We're not talking to you, Bradley, said Melinda. Get out of here, or I'll punch your face in, he replied. You wouldn't hit a girl, said Melinda. That's what you think. He shook his fist. Melinda and Laurie backed away. We only wanted to know his name, said Melinda. And what he was doing in the girls' bathroom, screeched Laurie. The two girls laughed and ran back to Colleen. Bradley slowly turned and looked at Jeff, amazed. Jeff sat with his head on the table and his arms over his head. You went into the girls' bathroom? Bradley asked. So what? Said Jeff from under his elbow. Carla says daff. Me too, declared Bradley. I go all the time. I like to make them scream. He smiled at Jeff. Chapter 9. Bradley Chalkers. What are you doing out of class? It was a teacher. Bradley didn't know her, but it seemed as though every teacher in the school knew him. I got a hall pass, he told her. Let me see it. He showed it to her. Mrs. Ebel gave it to me. Go ask her if. You don't believe me. Where are you going? Library, he said. To get a book. Okay, but make sure you go straight to the library. No detours, Bradley. He had lied. He wasn't even allowed to check books out of the library. The door to the counselor's office was open, so he walked right in. TM here, he announced. What do you want? Carla smiled warmly at him. Hello, Bradley, she said. I'm Carla Davis. It's a pleasure to see you today. She held out her hand. I've been looking forward to meeting you. He was amazed by how young and pretty she was. He had been expecting an ugly old hag. She had sky-blue eyes and soft blonde hair. She wore a white shirt covered with different-colored squiggly lines, like some kid had scribbled on it. But as he stared at the shirt, he realized that it was made to look that way, on purpose. Aren't you going to shake my hand? She asked. No, you're too ugly. He walked past her and sat down at the round table. She sat across from him. I appreciate your coming to see me, she said. I had to come. Mrs. Ebel made me. For whatever reason, I'm glad you came. I meant to go to the library, he explained. I came here by accident. Oh, I don't believe in accidents, said Carla. You don't believe in accidents? That was the craziest thing he'd ever heard. She shook her head. What about when you spill your milk? Do you like milk? Asked Carla. No, I hate it. So maybe you spill it on purpose, she said. You just think it's an accident. She smiled. He stared angrily down at the table. He felt like he'd been tricked. I don't drink milk, he said. I drink coffee. He glanced around the room. It was full of all kinds of interesting-looking objects. This place is a mess, he said. I know, Carla admitted. I like messy rooms. Clean rooms are boring and depressing. They remind me of hospitals. I was hoping you'd like it here, said Carla. I was hoping we could be friends. Do you think we can? No. Why not? Because I don't like you. I like you, said Carla. I can like you, can't I? You don't have to like me. He squirmed in his seat. I was also hoping you'd be able to teach me things, said Carla. You're the teacher, not me. So, that doesn't matter. A teacher can often learn a lot more from a student than a student can learn from a teacher. Don't you get in trouble? Why should I? He didn't know the answer to that. But he knew that if it were his room and it was this messy, he'd get in trouble. I didn't do anything wrong, he declared. Nobody said you did. Well, then how come I have to be here? I've taught Mrs. Ebel a lot, Bradley agreed. Today I taught her geography. What do you want to teach me? Carla asked. What do you want to know? You tell me, said Carla. What's the most important thing you can teach me? Bradley tried to think of something he knew. The elephant's the biggest animal in the world, he said. But it's afraid of mice. I wonder why that is, said Carla. Because, said Bradley, if a mouse ran up an elephant's trunk, it would get stuck, and then the elephant wouldn't be able to breathe, and so it would die. That's how most elephants die. I see, said Carla. Thank you for sharing that with me. You're a very good teacher. He suddenly felt like he'd been tricked again. He didn't want to share anything with her. He hated her. What else do you want to teach me? She asked. Nothing, he said coldly. You're not supposed to talk in. Can I break something? He asked. Certainly. He looked around for something to break, then caught himself in time. It was another trick. He'd break something and then get in trouble, and nobody would believe him when he said that she had said there were no rules. I'm not in the mood, he said. All right, but if you are ever in the mood, there are a lot of things you can break, things I like very much and things that other children use. I will, he assured her. I know karate. He raised his hand sideways over the table. I can break this table in half with my bare hand. I'd hate to see you hurt your hand. School. Why not? It's a rule. Like no sticking gum in the water fountains. Well, in this room there are no rules, said Carla. In here, everyone thinks for himself. No one tells you what to do. You mean I can stick gum in the water fountain? You could, except I don't have a water fountain. Nothing ever hurts me, he told her. I've broken every table in my house, he declared. The chairs, too. Call my mother if you don't believe me. I believe you, said Carla. Why shouldn't I? You should. She did, too. For the rest of the meeting, no matter what he told her, she believed him. When he told her that his parents only fed him dog food, she asked him how it tasted. That's what it is, Bradley declared. That's what I meant. It's very good, said Carla. May I have it? Delicious, he said. Meaty and sweet. I've always wanted to try it, said Carla. When he told her that the president had called him on the phone last night, she asked what they talked about. Hats, he answered right away. Hats? What did you say about hats? I asked him why he didn't wear a hat like Abraham Lincoln. And what did he say? Bradley thought a moment. I can't tell you. It's top secret. Near the end of the session, Carla gave him a piece of construction paper and asked him if he wanted to draw a picture. He chose a black crayon from the big box of crayons and stayed with it the whole time. He scribbled wildly all over the paper. Carla leaned over to look at it. That's very nice, she said. It's a picture of night-time, he told her. Oh, I thought it was a picture of the floor of a barber shop, after someone with black curly hair got his hair cut. What for? I'd like to hang it up on my wall. He looked at her in amazement. You mean here? Yes. No, it's mine. I was hoping you'd share it with me, said Carla. It costs $1. It's worth it, said Carla. But I only want it if you're willing to share it. No, he said. Okay, but if you ever change your mind, I'll still want it. You can make me give it to you, he suggested. No, I can't. Sure you can. Teachers make kids do things all the time. Carla shook her head. It was time for him to return to class. "We enjoyed your visit very much," said Carla. "Thank you for sharing so much with me." She held out her hand. He backed away from it as if it were some kind of poisonous snake. Then he turned and hurried out into the hall. When he got to Mrs. Ebble's class, he crumpled his picture into a ball and dropped it in the waste-paper basket next to her desk. Chapter 10. Bradley sat at his desk in the back of the room. Last seat, last row. He felt safe there. The counselor had scared him. She was even worse than he had imagined. He looked at Jeff, who smiled at him and then returned to his work. Bradley was glad Jeff was his friend. Jeff and me are a lot alike, he thought. We're both smart. We both hate the counselor. And we both like sneaking into girls' bathrooms. Actually, Bradley never had been inside a girl's bathroom. It was something he'd always wanted to do, but he'd never had the courage even to peek into one. But now that he and Jeff were friends, he hoped Jeff would take him inside one. He was dying to know what they looked like. He imagined they were carpeted in gold, with pink wallpaper and red velvet toilet seats. He thought girl toilets would look nothing like boy toilets. They'd probably be more like fountains, with colored water. "So, how'd you like Carla?" Jeff asked him after school. They were walking along the sidewalk next to the school building, carrying their raincoats. It was no longer raining. "She's weird," he replied. "She likes to eat dog food." Jeff made a face. "Did she say that?" Bradley nodded. "She asked me why the president doesn't wear a hat." "How am I supposed to know that?" Jeff shrugged and said, "I don't know." "You don't like her, do you?" Bradley asked. I hate her," said Bradley. "Me too," said Jeff. "I hate her." Bradley smiled his distorted smile. "You want to go sneak inside the girls' bathroom?" he asked. "You mean now?" "Why not?" Now's not a good time," said Jeff. "Why not?" Jeff thought a moment. "There won't be any girls there now," he said. "They all go home to use their own bathrooms." "You're right," Bradley agreed. "Good thinking. We'll do it tomorrow during recess." Jeff smiled weakly. They walked around the corner of the building. "Hello, Jeff," said Laurie Weston. "Hi, Jeff," said Melinda Birch. "Hi, Jay," Colleen said so quietly that the EFF couldn't be heard. They'd been waiting for him to come by. Somehow they had found out his name. "Hello, hi," Jeff answered, blushing. Laurie laughed. Then the three girls hurried away. "Stupid girls," said Bradley. "Yeah," Jeff muttered. "I hate them," said Bradley. "Me too," said Jeff. "Why'd you say hello to them?" "They said hello to me first," Jeff replied. "So?" Jeff shrugged. "Whenever anybody says hello to me, I always say hello back." "Why?" "I don't know. I can't help it. It's like when someone says thank don't you automatically say you're welcome?" "No." "I do," said Jeff. He shrugged again. "I guess it's like a reflex. Like when you go to the doctor and he taps your knee, you have to kick. You can't help it. It's the same thing. When someone says hello to me, I always have to say hello back." Bradley tried to make sense out of what Jeff said. "I know what you can do," he suggested. "The next time one of those girls says hello to you, kick her." Chapter 11. A week later they still hadn't gone into the girls' bathroom. Jeff always had a good reason why it wasn't the right time. Recess was the wrong time, because it would be better to wait until after lunch, after the girls had eaten. Lunch was no good, because they hadn't had time to digest their food. Listening to Jeff, it would seem that girls never had to go to the bathroom. But Bradley had never been happier. He was thrilled to have a friend. He even was beginning to like school. Jeff had 2 gold stars next to his name. Bradley felt proud when he looked at them, almost like he had earned them himself. "What do you want to do?" Jeff asked. "Nothing," said Bradley. It was lunchtime. They had finished eating and were sitting out on the grass. "Did the counselor say anything stupid today?" Bradley asked. Jeff hesitated. He looked down at the ground, then boldly stated, "I like her." Bradley was shocked. "She said that I can like her even if you hate her," Jeff asserted. "It doesn't mean that you and I can't still be friends. We don't have to agree on everything. She said friendships are stronger when everyone has different opinions to share." "You told her I hated her?" Bradley asked. Jeff nodded. "Good. Except she didn't believe me," said Jeff. "She's weird," said Bradley. "She never believes anything anyone says. I'm not going to see her anymore. She said you don't have to. I told her you wouldn't show up today, and she said that was okay. She said you don't have to do anything you don't want to do." Bradley turned and looked back toward the school, in the direction of the counselor's office. "That's one of her tricks," he said. "So what do you want to do?" Jeff asked. "Nothing." A basketball bounced away from the basketball court and rolled toward them. Jeff jumped up and grabbed it. "Hey, Fishnose, over here," called Robbie, a boy from their class. "Kick it the other way," urged Bradley. Jeff threw the ball all the way on a fly to Robbie. "You should have kicked it onto the roof," said Bradley. "Maybe they'll let us play," said Jeff. "Let's ask them." Bradley shook his head. "No, I don't want to." Jeff watched the boys play basketball for a moment, then sat back down with Bradley. "Oh," Bradley said. "Here come those girls again. Try not to say hello to them." "Hello, Jeff," said Laurie. "Hello," said Jeff. "Hi," said Melinda. "Hi," said Jeff. "Hi, Jeff," whispered Colleen. "Hi," whispered Jeff. Laurie laughed as the 3 girls walked away. Jeff shrugged. "I can't help it," he said sadly. "Let's go beat them up," said Bradley. "Then they won't say hello to you anymore." He started after them, but Jeff didn't follow. "Come on," Bradley urged. "Girls are easy to beat up. You just have to hit them once, and they cry and run away." "Not now," said Jeff. "Why not? Everyone will see us. We'll get in trouble." Bradley stopped. "You're right," he agreed. "We'll get them after school." "I can't," said Jeff. "I've got to go right home after school and do my homework." Bradley was beginning to get fed up. "How come you're always doing your homework?" he asked, hands on hips. He said the word homework the way other people might say the word manure. Jeff shrugged. "Do you like doing it?" Bradley asked. "It's okay. I don't mind too much." Bradley kicked at the ground. "Do you think if I did my homework, Mrs. Ebel might give me a gold star?" he asked. "I don't think she gives gold stars just for doing homework," said Jeff. "But she might. Maybe I should do it sometime," said Bradley. "Why don't you come over after school today?" Jeff asked. "We can Do our homework together. Bradley's face twisted in anguish. Today. I don't think today's a good day to do homework. I can help. Why? Jeff started to say, then stopped. You can help me. With the stuff I don't understand. All right, said Bradley. I'll do it. Good, said Jeff. First, we'll beat up those girls, said Bradley. Then we'll go to your house and do our homework. Chapter 12. Just before the end of the lunch period, someone knocked very lightly on the door to the counselor's office. Come in, said Carla. A girl timidly stepped inside. Are you Miss Davis? She asked. Yes, but I prefer to be called Carla. Do I have to tell you my name? Asked the girl. No, not if you don't want to. Colleen Verigold, said the girl. She sat down in one of the chairs around the round table and said, I don't know who to invite to my birthday party. Carla remained standing. See, there's this boy I want to invite, said Colleen. Do I have to tell you his name? No. Jeff Fishkin. Carla smiled. But if I invite Jeff, then I'll have to invite another boy, because I can't invite 7 girls and only 1 boy, can I? I don't dare. Except Jeff has only 1 friend, and he's the most horrible, rotten boy in the whole school. I can't invite Bradley Chalkers to my birthday party. I just can't. She took a breath. So what should I do? You want me to tell you whom to invite to your birthday party? Laurie says you're good at solving problems. Laurie solves her own problems. I just help her think for herself. But I don't know what to think. Colleen exclaimed. I can't invite 7 girls and only 1 boy. And I can't invite Bradley. When's your birthday? November 13th. Then you still have plenty of time, said Carla. Let me give you a form for your parents to sign. Right now, I'm not even allowed to talk to you without your parents' permission. That's dumb. No, it isn't, said Carla. Some parents don't want strangers giving advice to their children. But my parents won't care, said Colleen. They said I can invite anybody I want to my birthday party. That's not the point, said Carla. She handed her the form. Colleen reluctantly took it. Can't you just whisper it to me? She asked. Carla shook her head. Melinda and Laurie were waiting for Colleen when she came out. Who are you going to invite? Asked Melinda. Not Bradley, said Laurie. Please, not Bradley. I don't know yet, said Colleen. She won't tell me until my parents sign this form. Chapter 13. Bradley dragged his feet as he walked to Carla's office. She was waiting in the hall for him. It's a pleasure to see you today, she said. I appreciate your coming to see me. She held out her hand. He stepped past her and sat down at the round table. She sat across from him. The reason the president doesn't wear a hat is because the doorways are too low, he said. He used to wear one, but every time he walked through a door, he'd hit his hat and it would fall on the floor. That makes sense, Carla agreed. Thank you for sharing that with me. But, she whispered, I thought you weren't allowed to tell me such top-secret information. The president says he trusts you, said Bradley. Thank you, Bradley, said Carla. I'm glad you trust me. He looked at her as if he thought she were deaf. He hadn't said he trusted her. He had said the president trusted her, but he decided to let it go. She was wearing a yellow shirt with large green triangular buttons all the way down the front. On one side of the buttons was a big white exclamation point. On the other side, there was a big white question mark. Jeff trusts you too, he said. I understand you two have become friends, said Carla. We're best friends. That's wonderful, said Carla. Today, after school, we're going to do our homework together. At his house. I'm going to help him with the stuff he doesn't understand. That's very nice of you, said Carla. I'm sure Jeff appreciates having you as a friend. I'm his only friend, said Bradley. But even if he had other friends. He won't have any other friends, Bradley interrupted. You don't know that. Yes, I do. I'm his only friend. But suppose he makes new friends? I don't want him to. But if he made new friends, then his new friends could become. Yes, it does. Your friends too. Why? He won't, said Bradley, shaking his head. Because, he said proudly, so long as Jeff is friends with me, just because you and he are friends, that doesn't mean he can't have other friends too, said Carla. Nobody else will like him. Chapter 14. Homework. After school, Bradley Chalkers was going to go to Jeff Fishkin's house, and they were going to do their homework together. Bradley couldn't believe it. Homework. It was all he thought about as he sat at his desk, last seat, last row, and waited for school to end. Maybe it won't be too horrible, he reasoned. After all, Jeff always does his homework. He must like it. The more he thought about it, the more he liked the idea. Homework. Work you do at home. Except he wouldn't do it at his home, he would do it at Jeff's home, and that was even better. It would be his first time over at Jeff's house. And after he did his homework, Mrs. Ebel might give him a gold star. Instead of scribbling, he drew little stars, one after another until the bell rang. But first they had to beat up those girls. Come on, let's go, he said, hopping out of his seat. Just a sec, said Jeff. He got a book from his desk. Oh, do I need one of those? Bradley asked. He hadn't realized that in order to do his homework, he would need to bring his book home. That's okay, we can share mine. They walked outside. There was a light drizzle. They're in Mrs. Sharp's class, said Bradley. We can wait here until they come out, then sneak up behind them. Who? Those girls. We have to beat them up so they won't say hello to you. We should probably get started on our homework right away, said Jeff. It won't take long, Bradley assured him. You just have to hit them once, and they cry and run away. But it's raining, said Jeff. It was barely misting. Good. We can push them in the mud and get their clothes dirty. Girls hate it when their clothes get dirty. They stood about 10 yards away from Mrs. Sharp's door and waited. Several kids came out, but they didn't see Colleen, Laurie, or Melinda. Maybe they've already gone home, Jeff said hopefully. No, girls always take a long time to leave class, Bradley explained. First, they have to put their papers neatly in their notebooks. Then they have to mark their places in their books and put all their pencils in their pencil holders. Then they put everything away, neatly, in their desks. He said it as though it was the most disgusting thing anyone could do. Sure. Here they come. Melinda, followed by Colleen and Laurie, came out of Mrs. Sharp's room. Bradley put his finger to his lips. Then he and Jeff walked after them, keeping their distance. They followed the girls around the side of the building and along the sidewalk away from the school. Let's just go home, said Jeff. The homework might take a long time. Girls kick, warned Bradley. They don't know how to punch, so they try to kick you. He quickened his pace until he was just a few steps behind the girls. Jeff lagged a little behind. Laurie was the first to turn around. You, Bradley Chalkers, she said, making a face. Laurie Loudmouth, snapped Bradley. The ugliest girl in school. Melinda and Colleen stopped walking and turned around too. Grow up, Bradley, said Melinda. Make me, he replied. Hello, Jeff, Colleen said very quietly. Hello, said Jeff. Quit saying hello to him, said Bradley. It's a free country, said Laurie. We can say hello. Not to us, said Bradley. We didn't say hello to you, said Laurie. Just him. Hello, Jeff. Hello, said Jeff. Laurie laughed. Why don't you just leave us alone, Bradley, said Melinda. No. You leave us alone first, Bradley said, and he pushed Melinda. She pushed him back. He pushed her again. She shoved him off the sidewalk. He slipped on the wet grass and fell to the ground. Laurie laughed hysterically. Bradley scrambled angrily to his feet. You got my clothes dirty. Bradley wet his pants, teased Laurie, hiding behind Melinda. Shut up, he yelled. You started it, said Melinda. Teal punch your face in, said Bradley. He shook his fist at her. Melinda raised her fists in the air. He charged toward her, then kicked her in the leg. She slugged him in the face with all her might. Bradley stumbled backward and almost fell again, but caught his balance. He glared at Melinda as his eyes swelled with tears. No fair. 4 against 1, he shouted, then ran home crying. Chapter 15. My poor baby, said Bradley's mother as she wrapped her massive arms around him. He had stopped crying shortly after he ran away from Melinda, but started again when he saw his mother. They beat me up and threw me in the mud, he sobbed. His mother wiped his face with a tissue she kept rolled up in her shirt sleeve. Come on, she said, and led him by the hand, down the hall to the bathroom. You'll take a nice warm bath, put on clean clothes, and feel good as new. Claudia was in the bathroom, combing her hair. What happened? To him. Some bullies picked on him after school. There were 4 of them, said Bradley, and they ripped up my homework too. You've been crying. Claudia accused. That's the rain, said Bradley. Claudia started to say something, but her mother told her to leave the bathroom. She laid out clean clothes on the bathroom counter, then started the water. After his bath, Bradley went into his bedroom. He was just in the nick of time. Ronnie the rabbit was romping across the bed, singing "Do-dee-do-dee-do," when suddenly she was lost. "Where am I?" she asked. Suddenly, 3 bad guys were chasing her. They were the 2 of spades, the 9 of hearts, and the King of diamonds. The King of diamonds was the leader of the bad guys. After her, he yelled. "Help!" called Ronnie. She ran to the edge of the bed, the cliff. She was trapped. The floor was 1,000 feet below. The bad guys moved in for the kill. "Let me go," she shouted, then fell off the bed onto the floor. But that was an accident. Bradley picked her up and put her back on the edge of the bed. It never happened. There was time out. "What are you going to do to me?" asked Ronnie, trembling on the edge of the cliff. "We are going to kill you," said the King of Diamonds. "Oh, no, you're not," said a voice from behind. It was Bartholomew. "Get him, boys," ordered the King of Diamonds. The cards attacked. Bartholomew punched the 2 of spades in the stomach, then flipped him over his head and over the cliff. "Iowa!" The 2 of spades yelled as he fell 1,000 feet to his death. Next, Bartholomew beat up the 9 of hearts. "Go join your friend," he said as he threw him over the cliff too. "Iowa!" cried the 9. Now only the King of Diamonds was left. He came at Bartholomew, swinging an axe. "I'll chop off your head," he sneered. Bartholomew ducked, then kicked the axe out of the king's hand, and punched his face in. He threw the king over the cliff too. Ronnie ran to Bartholomew. "You saved my life," she said. "I know," said Bartholomew. They kissed. Claudia walked into the room. "Mom's making cookies because you got beat up," she said. "Ooh, you're going to have a black eye." I didn't get beat up, Bradley declared. I beat them up. I gave one kid 2 black eyes, and another boy 3. You can't give somebody 3 black eyes, said Claudia. Shut up, said Bradley, or I'll give you 4 black eyes. Claudia shrugged and left his room. Bradley got up from his bed and went into the kitchen, where his mother was making chocolate chip cookies. She let him lick the spoon. I want to know the names of the boys who did this to you, she said. I'm going to call your school principal. Bradley thought for a moment. I don't know all their names, he said. Don't be afraid to tell me, said his mother. They won't hurt you any more. Bradley thought a moment. Jeff Fishkin, he declared. He was the leader of the gang. I'll call the school first thing in the morning, said his mother. Good, said Bradley. I hope he gets in trouble. I hate him. Chapter 16. Bradley walked slowly, holding his hand over his eye so nobody would see it. His mother would have let him stay home from school, but his father said he had to go. He's scared, his mother had said. Some bullies have been terrorizing him. Babying him will not solve the problem, said his father. He has to learn to stand up for himself and fight back. The only reason the bullies pick on him is because they know he's afraid. Bradley was afraid, but not of bullies. He wasn't scared of Melinda, either. It was little Laurie Weston who scared him. He could picture her standing in the middle of the playground with her big mouth, shouting for the whole school to hear. Melinda Birch beat up Bradley Chalkers and made him cry. Cautiously, he walked across the schoolyard, hand over eye, and entered Mrs. Ebble's class. He sat down in the last seat of the last row. Jeff's chair was empty. Good, he thought, still covering his eye. He probably got kicked out of school. Out of his uncovered eye, he looked at the chart full of gold stars on the wall next to him. He was glad he didn't have any. He thought gold stars were ugly. Mrs. Ebble was in the middle of teaching the difference between adjectives and adverbs when she suddenly stopped and asked, "Bradley, is there something the matter with your eye?" "No." "Then please take your hand away from it." "I can't," he said. "Why can't you?" He quickly tried to think of a reason why he had to keep his eye covered. His mind raced through 100 ideas. "My hand's stuck," he said. "It's stuck?" asked Mrs. Ebble. "I was gluing something and got glue on my hand, and then I accidentally touched my face with my hand and it got stuck." "Bradley, take your hand away from your eye." He grabbed his wrist with his free hand and pretended to try to pull it away. "I can't. It's stuck." "Do you want to go to the principal's office?" she asked. "He's good at unsticking things." "Wait, I think it's starting to loosen now," he said. He pried his hand away. There was a bluish-black circle around his eye. For a few seconds nobody said anything, then everybody started talking at once. "What happened?" asked Mrs. Ebble, but then quickly said, "Never mind, I don't want to know." She told the class to turn around, and started again on adverbs and adjectives. Jeff walked in late. He said something to Mrs. Ebble, then sat down, next to Bradley. Bradley looked the other way, at the chart full of gold stars. Of all the stars, Jeff's were the ugliest. For once, he wished he sat in the front of the room. Then only Mrs. Ebble would have been able to see his face. Where he was, everyone could turn around and stare at him. All morning, Mrs. Ebble had to keep telling kids to turn around and face front. When the bell rang for recess, he put his hand over his eye and hurried outside. He went to the far end of the playground where nobody would bother him. But the word quickly spread that Bradley Chalkers had a black eye, and kids kept wandering past him trying to get a peek. "Melinda fights dirty," said Jeff, coming up behind him. She hit you when you weren't looking. And you couldn't hit her back because it's impolite to hit a girl. Right, said Bradley, turning around. I would have punched her face in, except it's impolite. Melinda probably told the whole school that she beat me up. She's so stupid. No, I don't think she told anybody. After you left, she asked me not to tell anyone what happened. She made Laurie and Colleen promise not to tell too. She's probably afraid I'll punch her face in, said Bradley. Probably, said Jeff. Then, this morning I was called into the principal's office. He thought I was the one who hit you. What'd you tell him? Bradley asked. Jeff shrugged. I told him you're my best friend. The principal's stupid, Bradley agreed. Chapter 17. Jeff and Bradley ate lunch together around the side of the building, where nobody would bother them. Jeff stood up. I'll be right back, he said. I have to go to the... Hi, Brian, he replied. How's it going, Jeff? Asked Russell. Okay. He's the guy who gave Chalkers the black eye. Way to go, Jeff, said one of the boys he didn't know. All right, Jeff, said another. Oh man, would I have liked to have seen that. This is Jeff Fishkin, Robbie told the boys who weren't in his class. Man, when I saw Chalker's eye today, said Robbie, I just smiled. And then when I found out you got called to the principal's office, Bathroom. Which one? Bradley asked. Boys, said Jeff. Oh, said Bradley. I'll wait for you here. It was a very long wait. Hey, Jeff, Robbie called as Jeff stepped out of the bathroom. Me? Asked Jeff. It surprised him because Robbie had always called him Fishnose or Fishbrain. Come over here, said Robbie. A group of boys was with him. Jeff recognized some from his class, but didn't know them all. One of the boys had a basketball. Thought, way to go, Jeff. You didn't get in trouble, did you, Jeff? Asked Dan. Jeff shook his head. They probably gave him a medal, said Russell, laughing. The others laughed too. Basketball. Sure, said Jeff. First pick. I got Jeff, he said. Jeff beamed. You like to play basketball, Jeff? Asked Andy, the boy with the... They chose teams. Robbie and Andy were captains. Robbie had. Hi, Jeff, said Brian, a boy from his class. They played basketball for the remainder of the lunch period. Who your real friends were. Jeff's team won, but it was also the team with 5 players. The other. Jeff smiled. These were the kind of friends he had had back in his team had only 4. Everyone told him he played a great game. I always wondered why a guy like you was hanging around with Chalkers, said Robbie. I guess it just took you a while to find out. Old school in Washington, D.C. Of course, it meant he couldn't be friends with Bradley anymore, but he shrugged.